This is a Hot Pie Media original.
Unfortunately for her, she just had to sit through the introduction of this show, which is pretty bizarre and probably kind of disappointing. She is with Ground Game Texas. She is Julie Oliver. She's with me now and was very patient to sit through that boring intro. So sorry about that.
Not a problem. I almost hung up. No, I'm just kidding. No, not a problem at all.
You certainly don't want to watch now that you found out there's partial nudity and juggling mimes and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the cobra.
Well,
snakes,
yeah. Sometimes it's shirtless Jeff too, which is kind of weird. But
weird thing, I like spiders, but not snakes.
Yeah. No, we're not doing spiders. Before we talk about marijuana in Texas or marijuana not happening in Texas or anything else, you ran for Congress twice, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So you would be an expert on this. And I'm going to put you in the position of either criticizing the opponents or trying to answer for Democrats in general. Why is it there is seemingly no opposition to Greg Abbott? And why wouldn't there be public opposition to Greg Abbott right now? It's just weird to watch the legislative session play out. And I know Democrats would say, hey, look, we're behind the eight ball. It's tough anyway, gerrymandering this or that. All of that is legitimate. But just the public voice, the ability of Greg Abbott to just sort of take these nonsensical, non-issues and just keep hammering away at them with no opposition whatsoever. I just am asking you, I'm asking anybody, where is the opposition?
Well, if you drive up I-35, you'll see it with Don Huff billboards everywhere. But you're right. It seems that there is not a Democratic response to what Greg Abbott is doing, other than the folks who are, posting on their social media accounts, going to the Capitol and testifying. This was a dark year for our legislative sessions, several of them, and this would be a perfect opportunity to hit Greg Abbott really hard. And it seems that there is a collective silence coming from the other side of the aisle. And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not alone in this observation that, whether you agree with him or not, it's just shocking to watch this play out when the guy, he's finding his way down to about 35%. I mean, these issues that we get that it's going to get him reelected, but we also get that it's sort of driving his numbers down and seemingly would open the door for someone to say, that's crazy talk.
Well, I mean, this has been such a strange year to begin with, right? We started in a pandemic, went right into a winter storm that we were not prepared for, right into a legislative session where it's just like one after another hits on our democratic freedoms, and especially when it comes to voting or women's choice. It was just one assault after another. And I could opine on whether I think there is infrastructure within the state party or not. And, it seems that there isn't. This would be the perfect opportunity to do a ton of fundraising, to recruit candidates to take on Greg Abbott. We've got some excellent leaders in the state who could do that. And it seems like the only two nutballs that want to do it are Don Huffines and, what's the other guy? Alan West. And it just goes from bad to worse.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, what is Beto? I mean, does Beto O'Rourke want to be governor?
I don't know. I haven't spoken with him since.
You would agree if he does, or anybody else for that matter, you're kind of missing your chance, right?
Right.
Okay.
I agree. I mean, this is again the perfect opportunity to remind people what Abbott has done to our state. That these priorities basically come from him. He's the head of the state. I realize that certain things come from the House side, certain things come from the Senate side, but ultimately it's Greg Abbott's agenda, and we're living with that. And the fact that he would even compromise the safety of our school children, with banning masks or banning mask mandates. I've got a kid who has a compromised immune system, and it's just like, I mean, I know we're not going to cuss on this show, but
You can cuss.
and I'm not a congressional candidate anymore, so I can.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just seems like he's given the giant middle finger to parents and their kids, especially kids who have compromised immune systems like my son.
Okay, so again, the issues seem to most people, it's kind of crazy talk. I mean, this is the voting rights thing is, it just all seems to drive that number down to just pacify the 35%. I just don't understand. I mean, for Democrats to seemingly throw their hands up and say, "Oh, woe is me," you're not even trying. I mean, you're gonna look up a year or two, or as you know, I mean, you went through it twice, and you're gonna keep losing because you're missing the opportunities to grab the stage floor and at least be heard.
Well, I think a lot of people right now, at least, are grumbling that it seems there is one candidate who could step into this space and do something, who is kind of holding everybody else hostage from stepping into that space. And, my personal opinion is make a decision one way or the other. Either say yes and then fully commit and seize this opportunity, or say no and allow the floor to open to somebody else, right? I think everybody's holding their breath, to see if Beto steps into this. And I think Beto is I really do. I think he's a fabulous candidate. I think he's a wonderful uniter. Clearly, understands issues and understands people. And he would be a formidable opponent to Greg Abbott.
Well, if it's him, he's not off to a great start. I mean, I can't believe in a day and age in which it's so easy to be heard and grab platforms and fight and argue and all the things you can do now, the collective silence at the state level is pretty remarkable, pretty shocking.
It's deafening,
Yeah, well said.
It is deafening.
Okay, so you're with Ground Game Texas. When we talked, I don't know, a while back, you're trying to, let's be clear, decriminalize marijuana city by city. Is that right?
Correct. Ending enforcement of Class A, Class B misdemeanors in Texas. That's up to 2 ounces and up to 4 ounces, respectively. But ending enforcement, creating an ordinance within each of these cities that we'll be going into that would direct police departments to stop issuing citations and stop arresting people for low-level marijuana offenses. I'll tell you, a lot of this is driven from my congressional campaign because I did a lot of campaigning in Killeen and Copperas Cove that has a huge veterans community. They asked me routinely for two things. Can you help me get my disability claim met in a timely fashion? And can you help decriminalize marijuana? Because I would like an alternative to opioid surgeries and steroid shots.
Wow. So that this wasn't an issue for you before that. This became an issue for you?
I never even really thought about it. Quite honestly, I never thought about decriminalizing marijuana before I ran for Congress. And when I heard from so many veterans that this is a real issue for them, and we have a lot of veterans who are suffering. I mean, to give you some context, I became really close with a city council candidate who eventually got elected in Killeen. He was like, "Julie, when you deploy over 100 jumps out of an airplane, it screws your back up. I mean, your back is screwed." And he had to get spinal fusion surgery to be able to walk. And, there are remedies and alternatives to the pain that a lot of our veterans live with, and other people. There are a lot of chronic issues and chronic pain that people live with, that marijuana is an effective and safe drug that they can use to manage it. Much safer than opioids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just isn't the medical community on that side?
Yes, they are. And, I would say the medical community that's not getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay. So, I don't know, how much why didn't that get enough traction? I mean, the issue itself, the issues that you've presented, the issues that you are, I can't say, it's not fair to say campaigning on, that you're bringing up are not exactly fringe, crazy, nut job issues. These are pretty mainstream issues. I mean, they're maybe two of the most mainstream issues I can think of. Legalizing and or decriminalizing is about as mainstream both sides of the aisle as you can get. What's the problem?
I don't know. And what's so funny, Jeff, is I've had people, I mean, I feel like this is the great uniter between the two parties, because I have had Republicans come up to me and hug me saying, thank you for doing this. 87% of Texans want it decriminalized in some form or fashion, 91% of Americans. So you're talking about it's a super minority that doesn't want to do anything on this. I would include in that super minority our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, who has said this will never come to the floor of the Senate. He moved a teeny smidge this legislative session to allow anyone with cancer to be able to seek a medical prescription for marijuana. And he allowed a little carve out for PTSD, but nothing for pain. And I'm sure a lot of that is driven by the pharmaceutical industry not wanting cheap alternatives to pain medications.
Right, because when people hear this conversation, or again, if they just use their common sense, they're thinking, yeah, what's the big deal? You're right. There probably is not another issue of which you could get 80% or higher approval than
right.
The variations. It's not my thing, but I'm not in pain. It's not recreational for me. But I would dare say 8 out of 10 people would say, I really don't flipping care. So what's the pushback? It doesn't make sense. Republicans are hiding from it for what reason?
I don't know, and I fear that they'll actually discover that it's a winning issue with two things. I think they will discover it's a winning issue. It is a winning issue. People voted overwhelmingly in some of the reddest states for this. You've got South Dakota, Montana, Arkansas to the east of us did a medical marijuana decrim initiative. They're now pursuing signatures to get full recreational in Arkansas. And let me tell you something, Texas is going to be late to this game, and we're going to miss out on the economic benefits that our state can reap if we don't do something about legalizing marijuana in our state.
I may, whenever you were on last, I'm sure I asked you, but okay, so I mean, Arkansas would have
Oklahoma
as well. They should. I mean, it's money, right? It's money left on the table, and it's so. Is Texas going to be last? Is Texas going to be last?
Texas is the federal government. One of them will be the last holdout. I mean, I'm surprised that Biden has also stayed steadfastly committed to not removing marijuana from Schedule 1. It's a Schedule 1 drug like heroin or cocaine.
Okay. Why? What would be Joe? I mean, I get that Joe Biden's an old guy. I get that he may be stuck in whatever reefer madness mentality, but he's not surrounded by stuffy people. As you said, here's a winning issue. Why is it not carried forward as a winning issue?
It's a winning issue. It is a taxable issue. And in fact, it's a voluntary tax that could generate a ton of revenue for our state and our country, because you'd have a state and a federal tax component to it. I wish I could get into their minds and say that I knew. I will say that with the older crowd, and when I say older, I'm talking about typically the ones that are 70 and above, there seems to be resistance. And I don't know if that goes back to watching Reefer Madness when it was, in first release, and becoming traumatized by that. But we know that that was propaganda.
Yeah.
And the reality is, okay, I give this example too, and a lot of times this will open up people's minds. I used to work for a large hospital system here in Austin, and every ACL Fest, everyone without fail, you would have somebody who came in who smoked marijuana at ACL Fest, but it was laced with something. And they came in, and typically it was synthetic marijuana, and it had a dire consequence. And in fact, we lost a few young people who smoked at a concert and died because they took something from the crowd, smoked it. If we want to end these nonsensical deaths when a young person, an 18-year-old, is smoking a joint at a concert, let's give them safe marijuana, right? And I know people are like, don't give 18-year-olds marijuana. Well, we know, come on. Let's be realist about this. If young kids want to smoke this, if anybody wants to smoke this, there's ways to get a hold of it. But I don't want young people smoking something that is laced with fentanyl and dying a premature death. And for a lot of suburban kids, guess what, parents? Your kids are smoking it. So.
Right. So are the parents, though, by the way.
Yeah, so are the parents, right.
This is one of the most bizarre. Why is it such a non-starter? Okay, I mean, role play with me for just a second. So here's Dan Patrick, or I don't care, any Republican you want who you said privately would say, thanks, Julie, or cool, right on. But publicly, you sit across from, I don't care, fill in the blank Republican, then we'll get to Joe Biden. And you lay out the financial benefits. You lay out the argument you just made. You lay out the fact that their mom or sister could benefit from this. And there's a camera on all of you. The answer back is what? No, I won't do it because...
A camera is rolling, so the no, I won't do it because that's good. I don't know. I don't think there's a good answer. I think privately, and what they're not telling people is there is a big money interest to ensure that it's not legal. And I keep pushing back on the pharmaceutical industry because we know that the pharmaceutical industry through OxyContin has killed almost a million Americans, y'all. That's more than what coronavirus has, done to our country. Almost a million people, and the pharmaceutical industry got a slap on the wrist. They're paying fines, but they're not going out of business. They were drug pushers that pushed OxyContin on people without telling doctors and without telling patients the ramifications and addiction problems they would have from this. So I know there is big money interest behind this. And we know that most of our politicians, I would say 99.9% of our politicians take money from big industries. I'm grateful I didn't. I could say no to them. So I could be independent in that respect, but most of them do. And, I have to say the other thing, Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott are catering to a super minority. If you look at the election numbers from 2018 in Greg Abbott's reelection, he won the primary with 9.2% of registered voters voting for him. 9.2%. He went on to the general election because he's a Republican, foregone conclusion, he's going to win. But let's go back to the primary. It's 9.2% of registered Texans who voted for him. He's catering to that 9.2%.
Right. That's where the weird balance is. If someone's just looking at this objectively, politically, and moving the needle, and that is, okay, so, they want money. But bottom line is, this, the politicians exist to get reelected. What's most important is just getting reelected. I mean, the money is nice, but they want to get reelected. We've learned that about Republicans, that they've all of a sudden turned anti-corporations because that's what that base likes. Okay, but then that invites, he gets 9%. What is stopping Julie Oliver, Beto O'Rourke, Matthew McConaughey from saying, you know what? Here's what I'm going to run on. Here's grandma, here's vet, here's doctor, here's neurologist. I mean, I could just line up people and come in there and take that 80%. Why doesn't that happen? And would it work? Would you be able to take that 80%? Say, that's fine, Greg Abbott, Joe Biden. You guys stay at your 9%. I'm going to go convince 8 out of 10 people this is right because they already think it.
I hope that whoever is the Democratic candidates for any of our statewide offices runs on this issue. I really do. It's a winning issue. And I think they will be able to pull in a ton of what would be general election Greg Abbott voters to the other side. Now, saying that, Republicans went into this legislative session knowing that they were going to rig the game. And that's what SB1 was. Convenient voting? No, we're going to do away with that. Curbside voting, if you have disabilities and it's challenging, or you're a young mom who has kids and it's challenging for you to either drag in your toddlers and babies and wait in a 4-hour line. I mean, no, we're not going to make it convenient for you. You're going to get fatigued and you're going to go home. They rigged the system so that they can get, again, reelected with a super minority. That's why, partly why I'm doing what I'm doing with Ground Game Texas. We need to turn voters out so that we can have options, that we can have real options on who gets elected to our state and who is making these decisions for us. Because they certainly aren't representing me, certainly aren't representing my children, and they certainly aren't representing the majority of Texans who want to see marijuana decriminalized.
John McClellan is the co-founder and creator of ATX Hot Sauce, now in all 50 states and several retail outlets as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to let this social media rock star chef walk us through 4 different sauces, and then I'll taste, and we'll tell everyone why they should buy. You can give the science behind these, and then I'll make the simple recommendation: go to atxhotsauce.com. All right,
I don't think anybody's heard the website.
Yeah, I know.
By you, Jeff,
I've never heard
it is atxhotsauce.com.
I'll say
I got that one right.
45 times, atxhotsauce.com. So let's do it.
I brought 4 flavors here, and we're going to test your palate today.
Okay.
And I only brought 4 because I didn't think you could handle 5 or 6.
Yes,
probably a smart move. Yeah. And so the first one we're going to try here, it's called Beet Heat. And just like the name implies, it has beets in it. It's made with red Fresno peppers. Red Fresnos are red peppers that are they're hotter than a jalapeno and a little bit less than a serrano. So not super hot here, just a lot of really good flavor. So we're going to start with this one, and then we're going to move up the chain.
Okay. I've had the Beet Heat, but okay.
Yeah, we're going to try it though.
It goes well with a cab. All right, Jeff's savoring Beet
I'll
Heat.
even do it with you, so that should be all right. Now remember, it is hot sauce.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's hot sauce. Trust me, man.
Wait,
It's hot sauce.
is that one hot to you?
No, a little.
Yeah. The great thing with the fermentation process is you get a bunch of the flavor right up front.
Yeah.
And then the heat comes, but then it dissipates pretty quickly, especially with the red Fresnos. This is not a very spicy one, but it is a very tasty one. Goes on great on sandwiches.
Beet Heat.
Beet Heat. B-E-E-T. Heat.
All right. Go to atxhotsauce.com.
That's right.
I'm curious, when you're talking on the side of a Democrat taking the issue and running with it. I'm also, and I think most people would be confused, why wouldn't a Republican do it? Why not? I mean, if you wanted to win, I mean, you're saying the numbers would back you up. If you really wanted to win, you would do it. So what would stop a Republican from doing this?
Well, I would say the primary will stop them. The primary, again, you have to think about how few people still are turning out for primaries in Texas. It's one of the lowest turnout elections we have. Constitutional amendment is a little bit lower. But if, again, Greg Abbott was elected with 9.2% of people showing up to vote in a Republican primary, you're not catering to a majority. Think about who is part of that 9.2%. Who votes in every election? Senior citizens, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got hardcore conservative senior citizens, this is not a winning issue for them. It might be for some of them who experience pain and would like some other remedies, but they also might not be educated that marijuana is a remedy that they could add to their, collection of morning and evening pills.
Okay. Yeah. It seems like a terrible marketing plan, though. I mean, you keep trying to restrict your customer base and restrict your customer base. I mean, sooner or later, I use the analogy all the time, sooner or later you become Sears.
Yeah, right. Or JCPenney.
Yeah.
You don't see them so often anymore.
So you're going to be successful in decriminalizing. Is that right?
Yes, we are. I mean, we absolutely are. I say, the only thing that could probably stop us is if another legislative session comes along and they say no more ballot initiatives at the city level.
Will they do that?
So never say never.
Would they do that?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so because what it would do is it would harm Republicans. This has been a very useful tool in the Republican playbook. I mean, let's remember that Karl Rove used the Defense of Marriage Act as a wedge issue. He did ballot initiatives to help George Bush get elected. And so it's a very effective tool. Obviously, the Travis County GOP has done a couple of ballot initiatives, one in May, one that's coming in November. So it would be foolish to take that direct democracy plan away from both sides. So I don't think they'll do it. And I think there are other things that are top of mind that are, again, wedge issues, like, young trans kids in sports, a wedge issue that's playing to
it's not an issue. It's
super minority.
But it's not an issue. It's not a thing.
It's not a thing. You're right. It's absolutely not a thing.
Okay.
But, Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, in their infinite wisdom, think it is a thing. And it's not. It's
so you're comfortable that major metro areas, Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, you're decriminalizing, you're going to get the signatures. It's a slam dunk in metro areas, correct?
So it's a slam dunk in metro areas if we go into them. Now, here's where I want to go. We want to go into the parts of Texas that have lower turnout because that's where we need. Killeen is the perfect example of this. Killeen had 49% of its residents registered residents turn out to vote last November. 49%. They didn't even break 50%. And this is a huge issue for veterans. And, and I understand why they're not turning out. It's, you've got Killeen is split into 2 congressional districts, neither of whom will listen to the veterans in that community. I will say both of the elected congressional representatives love to go to Fort Hood and do their, photo ops with the soldiers. But beyond that, helping veterans is not really part of their priorities. So if we can't get Killeen residents to vote for candidates, let's get them to vote for an issue. And this is an issue that is a winning issue. I know it will turn out voters in Killeen. And we can probably break 60, maybe even 65% turnout.
So your thinking is, I succeed in a few areas with this. Other people pay attention. It sort of breaks. Help me here. It breaks the barrier, the stigma, whatever barrier exists out there. Again, it's just weird that there's a barrier. And then are you the devil to small town law enforcement? I've always wondered that. And they get to shake people down and all that stuff. So I wonder if that's the group that hates what you're trying to do.
It could be, because you're taking a tool out of the toolbox for law enforcement.
Yeah.
But it also allows them to divert their resources to things that matter, property crime, violent crime. And so I look at it as like, hey, let's free you up to do other things in your community that is good and helpful.
So by 6 months from now, or I don't know what the time frame is on these initiatives,
Yeah.
6 months to a year from now, how many communities will vote to decriminalize?
I think over the next 12 months, we'll have probably, and I say next 12 months because we have Austin in May, we'll have the other cities in November. I think we'll probably have about 10 cities that we're actively working in. And I think I really do believe those cities will vote to decriminalize marijuana.
Okay. Assuming that's successful, that 10 turns into 20 or 30, and how long?
That's right. The following year, you just keep going. You keep going until the legislature takes it seriously and decriminalizes marijuana. They could actually, that would be the one thing that would be more effective than us going city by city, and it would halt our efforts, is if they actually decriminalize marijuana at the state level. There'd be no need to go anymore.
And the answer for why not is what right now?
Why not?
Grandma at the Baptist Church doesn't want it? That's the answer?
Grandma at the Baptist Church, the 37-year-old virgin who came up with the heartbeat bill probably doesn't want it. Again, they're playing to, the 37-year-old virgin man who came up with the heartbeat bill does not probably want this. It's.
Why does that guy care? I don't do it. Why I don't care. Why isn't the answer for most people? I really don't care. My grandmother needs it for glaucoma, whatever.
Right. People still look at this as, I think, conservative members of society look at this still as a religious issue. Just like, I grew up, I'm going to be honest, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and, dancing was off limits and drinking was off limits. I do both today. But this is you're just adding another sin to what's legal and allowing people to have the choice. I know. I really do think that that's where the conservative side of things, the angle from which they're framing this.
And that is what, 10% of the population, maybe?
10% of the population that voted to get Greg Abbott reelected. He went on to win, the general.
Okay. Do you, I don't know if you'll answer this.
And most people, you have to know this, Jeff, most people aren't paying attention.
Yeah, I know.
They've got their blinders on. They
Right.
want to go to their kids' soccer games on the weekend, go to UT football games, and they've got their blinders on. So they're not paying attention to what Greg Abbott does. He's got the right letter next to his name. So when the general election rolls around, yes, he's my man.
Okay. Yeah.
And he still only won with 27% of the general election.
Right. The average person with a life is moving on with or without him. So he's just floating out these nonsensical things just to make the Baptist church grandma happy. So he pacifies her. He's got the right letter next to his name. So everybody else says, what the heck? Well, that's you should be furious at someone like Beto O'Rourke. I mean, I don't understand why Democrats aren't angry. They're not doing anything. You're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I will say, I am doing this.
Yeah.
This is what I am doing. This is how I can help my state. And I will tell you, Jeff, I do love Texas. I was born here. My parents are from Minnesota. So I'm not one of those 5th generation Texans, but I do love my state. I think it's an incredible, I always thought the diversity in the state is amazing. Geographically, it's amazing. The number of people that we have and from the different backgrounds we have is truly amazing. And I want to do something that pulls people in so that we aren't held captive by this right-wing extremist, regime that has really taken a stranglehold on our state capital.
How does in legalizing, I do think there is a legitimate argument around the country. What happened here, I think there would be a debate. I'd probably jump in on it about you tax too much, you're going to drive it back in the black market. How much money could be made on 2 consecutive ACL weekends? Like how much could the state, what you know of the revenue stream and the taxation, whatever the taxation level is, which I think is an issue, but how much money would be taken in on 2 weekends?
Oh my God, I would guess in consumption, you'd easily have probably $1 million a week of revenue, easily, in the span of 6 days, probably more. That's very conservative. We have to remember Colorado did this and they have so much money in tax revenue that they're literally swimming in money and doing things that are really creative, to help their communities. And they shored up their schools. They're paying their teachers a living wage so that teachers like my mom didn't have to go out and clean houses on weekends to make ends meet. And that's what we did. We, went on the weekends with my mom and helped her clean houses because a public teacher salary in Texas did not, pay her bills. So does
grandma at the Baptist church think they're all wrecking cars and killing each other? What is?
I think that's, okay. I think that, and I will say that if public safety is an issue, and police officers have a duty to ensure that our public is safe. And so if somebody is driving recklessly or acting recklessly, of course, law enforcement has the ability to enforce laws on the books. If I decide to get drunk in my house and trash my house inside, that's my business.
Yeah.
If I go outside and do that in a public space, totally different, totally different thing. And police officers have the right to come and arrest me if I'm creating a public safety event.
So, I don't know if you're thinking in these terms. Here we are criticizing Democrats for being no-shows. Is this kind of thing your success? Does this carry you politically down the road? Do we look up 2 or 3 years from now and you come on this and you do the Zoom thing and you say, hey, I'm popular enough now because of this, so I want to be governor?
Honest to God, I do not ever want to be governor of the state. No, thank you. No.
Why?
I want to, why?
Yeah, I thought it was, in terms of power, structurally, it is a relatively weak position. You're just kind of the face of the franchise.
Yeah, you sign or you veto, right?
Yeah.
You sign or you veto. There are areas I want to help people. And I think that I can use my skill set and my experience. The governor, the seat of the governor is not it, and I'm not doing this to create power and name recognition for me. I'm doing this because I did make promises on the campaign trail. I can't do anything about getting disability claims met in a timely fashion. I don't sit in Congress. I'm not sitting on the Veterans Affairs Committee. What I can do is fight to legalize marijuana in our state. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to fight. I don't know how closely you followed my race, but I'm going to fight for healthcare for everybody. It's too expensive one-on-one. People cannot afford it. And it's the system is so rigged in favor of insurance companies, large hospital systems, And really, at the end of the day, what we are paying for in our healthcare system is the executive salaries of those industries. I used to show people like insurance executives, we're paying their total compensation. We are paying anywhere from $49,000 every day of the year to upwards of $200,000 a day every day of the year. That's part of your healthcare costs, Jeff. That's part of my healthcare cost. Every day, weekends and holidays included. Most people don't even make $200,000 a year, but we have executives who are part of our healthcare system making $200,000 every day of the year, and we pay for that.
Privately, do you hear it or do you think they feel it? Republicans are saying, right on, Julie, you're going to make my life will get easier now that you're pushing this.
I don't hear it. I hear it when I've gone out and collected signatures from the everyday person, the everyday man and woman. Yes, I hear it like, oh my God, thank you. And that's what I've had people hug me who are Republicans. And we've laughed about how this could be the unifying message between the parties. And but has anybody who is in office on the Republican side come to me and said, thank you? No. Yeah. Not one.
You mentioned Joe. What, other than being an old guy, what's Joe Biden's issue with this? I don't understand. President after president after president does the same thing. I mean, to act as if it's just a Republican issue at the federal level is not true. I mean, it's been draconian for fill in the blank president. I mean, they've been draconian. What is his answer?
I don't think he has an answer either, but Jeff, I really do seriously suspect if we go through the campaign finance reports of any of these elected officials, Republican or Democrat, who are opposed to decriminalizing cannabis, you are going to find that there is a moneyed interest behind it. And most often the case, it's, probably two, the pharmaceutical industry and pain management doctors. If somebody can treat their pain and not have to go to a pain management center, I mean, you're cutting out a lot.
Right, but okay. I'm sure you're right, but 9% of grandmas and at the Baptist Church in Texas is enough to get you elected. But 80% support around the entire country, everywhere is not like East Texas. I don't understand how at the federal level someone doesn't roll in and say, you know what, I'm going to make this a thing. And I can't believe it's that risky.
Chuck Schumer is trying. I don't know if you saw his tweet the other day, but it sure was a funny one. It had a lot of puns in it. Chuck Schumer is trying. I think he understands the benefits. I think he also understands the tax revenue that can come from it. I don't understand why Biden isn't doing it. But also you have to realize that the candidates and elected officials, if they aren't hearing from constituents about something that is an important issue and hearing from them repeatedly over and over again, they're not going to bend to the public will. What they're going to bend to is a lobbyist who gets more time with them than their constituents.
So the issue in general, as common sense as it may be, this is a weird way to put it, but I think you're saying it's so common sense, it applies to the average person, as you said, going to kids' soccer games, living life, working, doing what you do, that it's not enough to get them worked up to raise hell about it.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not enough for them to pick up the phone to call the White House hotline and say, hi, I'm Julie Oliver from Austin, Texas. I want Joe Biden to remove marijuana from Schedule 1.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I mean, unfortunately, that makes some sense. Yeah.
And it's easy to do. It's a relatively easy thing to do, to register what you want with your member of Congress, your senator, and then the administration. It would take 5 minutes at most to cover all three. Right.
So, Julie, in Austin, where it's a slam dunk, and maybe in Killeen, where it's a slam dunk, it's an initiative that people will see and hear about when?
So in Austin, it'll be on the May ballot. We'll start getting out the vote for that probably in March, so that we'll have about 2 months for people to understand that it's coming. Killeen will be the November ballot, so they'll start hearing about, we'll go and collect signatures early next year, and then they'll hear about it for get out the vote sometime in September. We'll also, take it to San Marcos. This is, talk about a college town, the party college town.
Well,
in Texas.
That's a tough sell there. Boy, you're going to have a tough time there, Julie. I don't know.
Right?
That's going to be hard work there.
So San Marcos, we're going to take it to
That's
Some
like
of the
saying, that's like going
Dallas
to San
County-
Marcos and saying, who's in favor of free beer?
Right.
Yeah, that's a
exactly.
tough one.
But it will get young people out to vote.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
smart.
a candidate, again, may not get a young person out to even go on campus and vote. But
Yeah.
You wanna not get ticketed for that marijuana? Go vote for this.
Wow. I think it's a safe bet. You know, if you're doing over under betting, I think it's a safe bet that you are going to hit 95%. It may be the single largest and most lopsided vote in this city's history.
Yeah.
You think?
I think it will be.
It might be
That's what
100. It might
that's
be
what
it might be
states have
100 to
seen.
0. There may be 0 on the other side.
States that have done this that have decriminalized marijuana have seen just extraordinary turnout in the years that they've decriminalized it.
Wow.
Extraordinary, even in midterm years, just phenomenal. And the people who are signing our petition, 60% of them are under the age of 35. So senior citizens, beware. The young people are coming.
They're coming. All right, Julie, as always, good talking to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a good one.
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.